One of the amazing things about living in Liverpool is the remarkable collection of art in the region. It's incredibly exciting that just 5 minutes walk from where I live here is Sudley House, full of Turners and Gainsboroughs and a great collection of sentimental Victorian art. Undoubtedly, the jewel in Liverpool's crown is the Walker Gallery, with one of the most impressive collections outside London. Last Sunday's Gospel reading was the story of the disciples meeting a stranger on the road to Emmaus. And in the Walker Gallery is Titian's painting, which captures the moment when the stranger broke bread and the disciples' eyes were opened and they recognised Jesus. This painting was much admired by the great 16th century painter and architect Giorgio Vasari, and it once hung in the Venetian Doge's palace. Paintings such as this are full of references and are a work of biblical theology in themselves. It doesn't take an art historian to see the parallels with this painting of the Last Supper, also by Titian, which is now in Madrid. Look at the composition of the characters arranged around Jesus. Look at the crispness of the tablecloth and the dog underneath the table. Look as well at the classical columns behind and the Tuscan countryside behind, masquerading as Palestinian hills. The obvious relationship between these two paintings creates the focus on the Eucharist. The recognition of Jesus in the breaking of bread at Emmaus links to the presence of Jesus in the bread and the wine in the Eucharist, instituted at the Last Supper. Returning to the Liverpool Titian, the dog which we see under the table reminds us of the challenging passage in the Bible when Jesus is approached by the Canaanite woman who seeks healing for her daughter, and Jesus' approval of her comment that even the dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the table. This is a reminder that Jesus came for Jews and Gentiles alike. Let's look elsewhere in the painting. The blue flowers on the table are borage flowers. In Venice they were used to add a fresh flavour to wine and salads, just as flowers appear in some dishes today, though usually now only in more expensive restaurants. And look at as well at Jesus' brooch, which is in fact 2 nails from the crucifixion fashioned into a cross. But the feature which surely strikes us most is the tablecloth, also the central feature in the Last Supper painting. The crispness of the ironing always reminds me of the 19th century painter, whose work is rich in social comment, William Powell Frith. Frith's painting, Many Happy Returns of the Day, is only one where he uses Titian's skill at painting ironed linen. But whereas Frith uses the motif to illustrate the respectability of Victorian gentry, it features again in his picture of a wealthy family facing financial ruin, Titian is using the tablecloth to say something very different. Here, the cloth tells us that this is a celebration of the Eucharist. It is not a tablecloth, but an altar cloth, and everything in this painting tells us that this is a Mass, including the prayerful but liturgical hand position of the figure on the right. And of course, at the very centre of the table is the bread and the wine. Before we get too carried away with the uniqueness of Liverpool's Titian, let us glimpse briefly at an almost identical Titian which hangs in the Louvre in Paris. It is slightly superior in its execution, which perhaps suggests that Titian's studio had a significant hand in the Liverpool version, and we can also see that the figure on the right, whilst maintaining the same hand position, is a particular character in a monk's habit. Finally, the significance of the composition inspired others. Just 70 years later, Caravaggio used the same group for his own supper at Emmaus, which now hangs in the National Gallery in London. Caravaggio's precision, his use of gesture and expression to convey emotion, and his deployment of light in the revelation of Jesus have made this one of the most famous paintings in the National Collection. But the dynamic of that painting was foreshadowed by our Liverpool Titian.